Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, and welcome. And thank you so much for joining me this evening on Connecting with Jamaica. This is the 14th of the first, and there's so many things happening in the in London and the world. But this tonight we're connecting with Jamaica for a special discussion. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll just go straight at it. We're not going to really get into any sort of you know special introduction or whatever like that. But tonight, as we embark on a crucial journey, delving into a topic of paramount importance, improving governance and human rights in Jamaica. I want to thank those on TikTok. I want to thank those on Facebook. I want to thank those on YouTube. And also want to thank those on Instagram because I've got all these different platforms which is there. So come on in and please share this as well. Jamaica, with its vibrant culture, warm people, and breathtaking landscape, stands at a crossroads. It's a nation with immense potential, yet challenges persist in the realm of governance and human rights. As we recognize the urgent need to address these challenges and pave the way for a future where justice, transparency, and human dignity prevail. I'll go further. Governance is the backbone of any thriving society. It's about the structure and system that guides a nation towards prosperity and ensure the well-being of its citizens. In Jamaica, like in many places around the world, the call for improved governance echoes loudly. It's a call for accountability, for fairness, for transparency, and for a government that truly serves its people. But governance is not a solitary endeavor. It's intricately tied to the fabric of human rights. The rights and freedom that define our shared humanity must be protected and upheld. In Jamaica, as elsewhere, fostering an environment where every individual can live free from discrimination with access to justice and equal opportunities is not just a goal, but a moral imperative. Tonight, we delve into the challenges faced by Jamaica, but more importantly, we shed light on the imposing initiatives and potential solutions that can lead to positive transformation. We'll hear from the first of many experts as time goes by, as this is the first of many activists. We're going to hear tonight from Professor Rosalea Thompson, co-chair of Advocacy Network, who is working tirelessly, and I say tirelessly, to shape a better future for Jamaica. She has been tapping into the people's platform, not being discriminated, but recognizing the need to tap into all Jamaicans. So she's tapping in all to these different, not the mainstream, but the bloggers and different social media platforms, because she recognized that we need to reach to Jamaica. So therefore, fasten your seatbelts, dear audience, as we embark on this enlightening and empowering journey. Join us in this exploration of possibilities in the pursuit, what I said, the pursuit of justice. And I'll be coming back definitely with Miss Rosalie Hamilton. Thank you. Well, good evening. Good evening, Professor Rosalie Hamilton. How are you?
I'm doing well, and it is Hamilton and not Thompson or something like that.
What did I say,
You
Thompson?
said that in the introduction.
Oh
Yes.
no.
Don't
Well,
worry.
well,
No
listen,
worries at all. I'm
listen.
good.
I
How
was
are
checking.
you?
I was checking to make sure that you're with it. You know what I mean? So I dropped that little word there just to make sure you have been in tune. Professor Rosalie Hamilton. How could I forget that? Knowing that? Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I had a good day today. Come from church and went to this place called Blue Water with some of my children friends for her birthday, and I've been trying to 8 to 12-year-old girls together. It's a challenge. So I had to say I got to be here for 9 o'clock. You know what I'm saying? So that's it for me. But listen, this is a crucial time, and we're not going to mince words and get straight into it. Um, Jamaica is at a crossroad, as I set out there, and that is why I said I like to have these conversations with yourselves and different persons who are strong advocates to keep, what should I say, a continuity, not just a one-off discussion, but a continuity, because we've got to reach persons and we cannot rely on and wait on government. We got to do it ourselves. So without further ado, tell us about Advocacy Network. Let's set the stage. We've been there before, but Advocacy Network and the work that you do, Professor.
The Advocates Network is a group of individuals and organizations. We've come together because we think it is important
Yes.
to promote good governance and human rights in Jamaica.
Mm.
And our goal ultimately is to improve the social and economic conditions of the Jamaican people. And many of us are practitioners, activists on the ground in communities, working with gender-based violence, working with entrepreneurship, working in the
Mm.
schools with children, at-risk youths, etc. So we working in the prisons and all over, and we have a network of individuals that are really grounded in the problems that we face here in Jamaica,
Mm.
and we understand that a lot of these problems that we're confronted with are rooted in our history of colonization and slavery, and
Mm.
that we have to change the system, the structures, the inherited structures, the
Yes.
legacies that persist today. And when we do that, we will not only come to grips with the challenges that we have
Mm.
today, but we become better prepared, I think, to tackle these challenges.
Yeah, that's really good. And ladies and gentlemen, Professor Rosalie Hamilton and the team, and I would say that I've, it's good to say that you're talking to these persons in Jamaica, but it makes no sense unless you sign up with them. So I've actually signed over myself to Advocacy Network NIA and say, listen, I'm a part of this system, a part of the solutions, you know, as much as possible. But there was a powerful press release that you sent out this year, and the powerful press release sets out the wish list and the things that you want. The Advocacy Network calling all Jamaicans to renew their push for better governance, greater accountability, and transparency for the island, while building on the lessons learned and takeaway from 2023. But before we go there, the title that we set out was about governance and human rights. Can we just link the governance and the human rights in a perspective and set that stage, please?
Very, very important. And I'm glad you started with that link because we
Yes,
see them as kind of separate. But when we're
yes.
talking about governance, we're really talking about the process in
Mm.
which these institutions, the public servants, the people we elect, conduct our business on our behalf, and the governance, the way they manage these resources,
Yeah.
um, consistent with the rule of law, is what we're focused on when we're talking about governance, and that stewardship of these resources are all with the objective of making us better off,
Mm.
making sure that human rights are addressed and that we can achieve the goals that we want as a society. So this matter of how public servants, how public officials, how public institutions manage our resources, take the
Mm.
will of the people, and manage the process through which our will gets expressed, both in terms of how our money is spent and the decisions that are made, is what is at the heart of this. And so, um, in terms of just understanding the concept, it is quite complex. This idea of good governance, it packs a lot of issues. And the
Mm.
UN has identified 8 principles that are associated with this idea of good governance. And the very first one I like to talk about is the idea of participation and a participatory process,
Mm.
because that puts in the dialogue immediately the idea that governance is not just what the government does, it's not just what the people who we elect do. It
Mm.
also is about what we do, how we participate and hold them accountable. Accountability is another principle that is at the heart of this. The willingness and commitment of the people we elect
Yeah.
to explain their actions, are willing to be held accountable to us for how they've spent our money and
Mm.
how they've managed our resources. And issues of transparency is a third one. The whole idea in which, information is shared, Nothing is
Yeah.
in secret because, and if it is, it's in our national interests, like national security issues, for example.
Yes.
But that, you willingly share information because you're doing the people's business, not your own business. The responsiveness to our call, the effective and efficient use of resources,
Yes.
equitable and inclusive decision making, and of course, all consistent with the rules of law. These are the 8 principles that are embodied in this idea of good governance. And they're
You,
very much linked to human rights because it is through this process that we achieve the rights that we've signed on to, by the way, from 48 in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights.
you know,
You know,
someone
someone,
someone
someone.
just sorry, I thought I heard an echo there. Someone just said to me, "Why do we need the UN? Remain free." On Instagram. Why do we need I just pulled that
Well,
right away.
we don't live in isolation. We live in a world,
Yes.
and the UN is one attempt to pull
Mm.
countries together across the world to look at global issues and so on. I mean, I don't think we should go off on that. There's a whole long discussion about the adequacy of the UN as an institution, its relevance to the modern world, and so on. I think what is important is that there are a set of principles out there that is useful, I think. They're useful in helping us think through what this whole good governance idea is about.
Yes.
That's the only reason I really mentioned it.
Okay. Well, I've got Christian Blake from Paris, from France, and Marcia Bernard from Paris as well, joining us. I want to flag up this press release, and I'm going to bring this press release on the platform here, and let me just go. I'm going to go back to one good governance. The Integrity Commission. After more than 2 years, Jamaica Prime Minister has not yet satisfied the requirements of the IC to be certified under an anti-corruption legislation. We continue to urge the IC to prioritize the completion of its investigation in the country's interest and the Prime Minister. I dropped that in because you had some, what would I say, some wishes for 2024, isn't it? And this was one of the key ones, isn't it?
Yes, we think this matter should be settled as a matter of urgency. It
Yeah.
doesn't look good. It raises more questions than answers as long as this matter is unresolved.
Mm.
It gets to the heart of accountability because we have put rules in place under the Integrity Commission Act that we expect the very rule makers to comply with.
Mm. Mm.
These are rules about the declaration of their assets. And this is not something unique to Jamaica. Public servants are held to that standard across the world.
Yes.
And it is an expression of good governance. So we hope that this matter will be settled very quickly. And we hope the tension that exists between the Integrity Commission and the Parliament can be resolved in the context of the fact that there are 6 parliamentarians that are subject to investigation for illicit enrichment. And we've said in our press release that we expect that they should recuse themselves from all public engagements until this investigation has been completed and
Yes.
that they're absolved. So this matter of the possibility that some of the parliamentarians who are subject to this investigation is in fact part of the parliamentary committee reviewing and monitoring the
Yes.
Integrity Commission. That truly is troubling. And that's our concern of not knowing who they are and the fact that there may well be in that position in which there's a clear conflict of interest and certainly doesn't augur well for good governance.
Can I just ask, and as you use the words, and this one is very crucial, do the average Jamaican, and I don't know if that's the right word, the average Jamaican understand the plight and the dangers of ignoring these issues here? because it's been going on for a while, and it's like it is aloof. The government, it's like aloof, whereby it is not something which is being okay. I'll give you an example. Let me break it down. If it was something happening in the UK, the government would have gone down, not just that individual of the six or the five or the three. The government would have been taken down. And then the government in power, the prime minister would say he's got full confidence in his minister or his persons. And then within 24 hours, you'd hear that the person resigned to spend time with their families because the press and the people would hound them. Is that something which is lacking in Jamaica for something of its nature to remain for so long?
Let me say, I think we're getting there. And
Yeah.
I think programs like yours and other
Yes.
programs that bring these matters to the attention of the public provide details about, what it means and the
Mm.
standards we ought to be working towards. Um, will get us closer. I mean, we've seen, for example, for the first time in our history, the Speaker of the House resigning because of the report from the Integrity Commission.
Yes.
And that's a step in the right direction.
Yes.
So we've seen recently, a few years ago, the resignation of a minister, I would say within a day, of
Mm.
accusation of, breaching the risk management and disaster
Yeah.
awareness acts under the COVID arrangements, that whole legal framework for
Yes.
the movements and so on, COVID. And in fact, for your listeners in the UK, it was something very similar to what led to the removal of the prime minister.
Mm.
And so we were very disturbed about seeing a minister in that context, and he resigned very quickly. Now, these are
Mm.
new developments for us in our very young history of
Yes.
61 years as a nation. And so I think that if more Jamaicans make their voices heard on these matters that we see it does not augur well for good governance and is not in the interest of the nation, things will change. And we now have social media to help us to amplify our voice and
Yes.
to make our perspectives known with respect to these matters.
Before I go on to the next bit here now, I've seen that you have recognized and you have accepted the need to tap into different social media platforms. I saw you last night. And I saw you different nights. Andre Stevens, Ratigan, and all those guys really tapping into there. And sometimes these platforms, my platform, sometimes we can be classified as anti-government, undermining government. But why do you see the need to tap into these platforms which normally are seen as anti?
Well, I don't know if the perspective is anti or for. I think what the
Mm.
perspective ought to be is relevant and credible information. And
Yes.
I think there's a lot of fake news and hype and excitement on social media. And a lot of people is on social media and they're
Very.
looking for different things.
Mm.
I think certainly in my conversation with you, I understand that you have a serious audience, an audience of mainly Jamaicans in the diaspora, Jamaicans at home as well,
Yes.
listening, and are concerned about what's happening in their country. And so, to the extent that the work we do in the Advocates Network provides credible information and understanding in an unbiased way,
Mm.
then we hope that we communicate that. People will always have criticism of advocates. So we're
Yes.
not deterred by the fact that we're painted one color or the
Yeah.
other, that we're seen as part of the noise, and so on. When I think about it, if you look at our history, advocates for change were always branded as troublemakers. We're
Yes.
always seen as people we should stay away
Mm.
from because they were disturbing the status quo.
Mm.
And so I think all of us as advocates have to understand that what we are doing is troubling the status quo. Many people listening are wanting to achieve the objectives we want, but
Yes.
they will want to do it differently. And that's fine.
Mm.
Some of us are of the view that, if we don't stand up for our rights, if we
Yes.
don't agitate, if we don't protest, if we don't shout loudly, then this matter continues indefinitely.
Yes.
And so, in fact, just recently I saw on social media an excellent chronology of land rights in Jamaica. And it traced the squatting problem we know about today, and the problems that people have finding affordable land and decent housing and so on,
Yes.
tracing all the way back to 1838, when we had this so-called freedom, but we had no assets, no
Yes.
land, nowhere to go. We left the plantation with some of us were able to go into the free villages where the churches created a space for us.
Yes.
Some of us went overseas because there was just no place, and some of us squatted and took, and and so on. And there's a whole history of how the rules and laws changed
Yes.
to limit access to land for the majority of our people. And
Yes.
today, we persist with that problem. And it's
Yes.
in that sense, I think it's important for us to make the connection between where we are today. It's not, it doesn't, it's not here by magic or out of
Yes.
thin air. We're here because of inherited set of institutions that we've inherited, and we've not significantly changed. And that's why this discussion about our constitution is so important,
Yes. Yes.
because that's another example of an arrangement that we've inherited since 1962, and that we've not significantly changed to come to grips with the challenges in the modern world.
Thank you for that. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you and thank you for joining me on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok. And TikTok was someone was asking, who does she advocate for? That's a good question. And Professor Rosalie Hamilton here tonight, and I want to thank for Rosemary Francis Binder, who is Rosalie Hamilton, and I got Rosemary Francis Binder from Germany. I got we the People Republic Jamaica from Jamaica as well, and different persons are saying their bit. Thanks for having us, WTTP. It can deliver good governance advocacy network, and add various revisions to it. If I go on to this one here, number 3, the we commend the government for the timely review of the Commission Act 2017. However, we encourage Jamaican to pay close attention to the amendments to be proposed in 2024 to ensure that the public concern of potential weakening of the legislation do not materialize. Professor Rosalie, I may know, a few people may know, but the key thing is, and we spoke about this, how does the Jamaican know? Because the Jamaicans who are going to make a difference in any election will be the ones that go to the polls. Jamaicans who are going to make any difference regarding the constitution reform are the ones that go to the polls. And what we don't want is an apathy whereby 37% of the electoral list go to vote. How does this cascade down so people understand these amendments be proposed in 2024? What's the education, if anything?
Well, that's always a very difficult issue. And that, again, is why these kinds of discussions are important, because,
Yes.
there are many issues that are involved in governance, and not just substantively what the laws and the rules and so on are, but just the process of implementing them. And that we have to talk to people where they are. And that's
Yes.
why, I and others have been on several platforms talking about our work and trying to reach people where they are, and try to break things down and to explain this is what is happening. The slide you have there and the comment, from our press release speaks to the fact that the review of the Integrity Commission is part of what is required by law. And we commend the government for having that review ongoing, because there are other pieces of legislation that requires review that's not happening. And so this is an important step, but as we observe and we watch this dialogue, we are concerned that the changes that may be proposed will serve to weaken the teeth of the Integrity Commission rather than strengthen it. And so this is something that we encourage all Jamaicans to watch closely,
Yes.
because we don't want a review process to weaken our capacity to provide the kinds of scrutiny and oversight of the work of our, or let me say, let me be careful and say here, to provide scrutiny and oversight around the integrity arrangements that we expect from our officials. So we ask them to declare their assets, and so we expect them to do so and not to hide anything and not to raise issues of illicit enrichment.
Illicit enrichment. That's a very powerful one. Illicit enrichment, and and what's the other word for illicit enrichment that the average person can understand when they say illicit enrichment?
We can talk about it as corruption.
Corruption.
We can
Yes.
talk it
Ladies and gentlemen.
about
Yeah.
it of illegal access to
Yes.
resources and so on.
Mm, mm,
So the point is that we expect that our officials are prepared to live up to the standards. In fact, one of the concerns we have is the extent to which the Integrity Commission has put
mm.
to our representatives a code of conduct, in
Yes.
which, to the best of my knowledge and understanding, most have not signed. And
Mm,
that this code of conduct that was presented was based on principles, the Nolan principles, that are well established across the world as the principles to which we hold our elected officials accountable, public servants. Things like selflessness.
yeah.
We don't expect, if you're going to represent us, that you're going to be selfish, that you're going to be selfless. We expect you to have integrity. We expect you to be honest. We expect these are standards and traits that we hope you have. And so the Integrity Commission sought to reinforce that by saying,
Mm.
sign these principles, these codes of conduct.
Why is it difficult to sign these? Why is it?
That's the question we ask. Why is that so difficult? Is it a flawed assumption that you're honest, or that you lack, or you have integrity, or that you are selfless? Is this flawed? And if so, we should be concerned.
Someone mentioned the other day that Kamina Johnson Smith was vying for the office of the the what do you call it in the UK here, Commonwealth Secretariat General. That's one of the first things she would have to sign. Government and ministers, they have to sign that over here very easily and quickly and right away. And it beggars belief. And I know that I do my walk in the mornings, and I always just every other day it hits me so powerfully. I don't understand this. Why are there 6 persons who are being investigated still operating as if nothing are gone? Why is it that there is a government with ministers and a government with MPs are finding it difficult to sign something like the 7 principles of no? Listen, I was running for the diaspora board one time, years ago, with the diaspora initiative. You know what is going on now with the Jamaica Council and all those sort of things. I was involved with it from 2004 2006, and one time I was running for an office, and I had to sign up to the 7 Nolan principles, even for board members. In the UK here, Jamaica was advocating that we had to. I remember the High Commission persons there had to get. So why setting an example from the top? So who puts the pressure? Is it are the people in a position to give the pressure on the government?
Well, again, it depends on how we see ourselves in relationship to our government. If we see ourselves as tenants in this country, or squatters, we don't
Yeah.
own Jamaica, then we allow the owners to tell us how to behave and function. So I think that's one way to think about it. If we see the government officials as our boss,
Yes.
then that's a whole different approach to getting what we want,
Yes.
as opposed to seeing ourselves as owners of Jamaica.
Yes.
Seeing ourselves as giving our power, sharing that sovereignty of the land we call Jamaica with
Yeah.
our representatives, in trusting with them, in them, the kinds of expectations about how we want to see our country run.
Yes.
And these principles are key because they're really principles through which we should all live as human beings. We ought to be honest. We ought to be open. We ought to be objective. We ought to live with integrity and selflessness and accountability. That's how we ought to be. And if we are in leadership, the expectation is even higher. And
Yeah.
so I think a big part of the problem is how we see ourselves. And if we see ourselves as employers,
Mm.
and that we have to hold our employees, our representatives accountable, and we have to engage them just as if we are running a business. You
Yes.
hire somebody to run your business for you, and you stay in touch. You manage the money. You ensure that there's not no theft taking place. You ensure that they're doing what you want done. And if you don't get what you want, you fire them. And
Yeah.
so issues of, recall, issues of impeachment, these kinds of issues are on the table because we want to have a say with respect to whether our officials that we've elected within their term of office is really doing what we want them to do.
That's
So
very,
these are all issues that we have to discuss and debate in the context of our constitution. But it stems from, it comes from the idea that the people see themselves as sovereign, see themselves as owners of this land, and see themselves as the people on whose the people who shape the rules and laws and ultimately determines the direction of this country.
ladies and gentlemen, on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram and YouTube, please share this video. I just want to bring up someone comments here on Instagram. Rosalie, they said men can't multitask. I'm triple tasking, whatever. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Someone said here, Beladeka, who are the owners of the estate of the politicians or the people? It is as if they are our bosses, not servants of the people. And the point that you mentioned there, it is what the people recognize or see themselves as.
Absolutely. I mean, this is something I've had conversations with Jamaicans all across Jamaica, and I've asked them, and most time I pose that question. Most of the time I pose that question. The answer I get back is that we really see ourselves as tenants, squatters. We don't really own Jamaica, and there are two things. One is that we don't have the power. So let's agree that the power is concentrated in the hands of the executive and the prime minister in particular, right? That is the issue right now. That's where power is concentrated. And so part of the conversation, an important part of the conversation in constitution reform is who ought to have the power?
Yes,
Where
yes.
ought the power to rely? And if it is in the hands of the people, then we need to put different arrangements in place where there is devolution of the power that's concentrated in the hands of the prime minister and the executive and in cabinet in particular. And we need to share that power so that our representatives who we ask to represent us have the power to provide important oversight and investigative arrangements within Parliament to look into matters on our behalf. And importantly, that we have the rules that enable us to petition the government to say we don't like this or this is what we want. So we need these mechanisms, these channels in which we can exert our power. I would want to put it this way, that,
Yes.
we have this kind of representative approach to democracy where
Yes.
we've put a lot of our efforts into the electoral process, making sure that it's fair and free and so on. And then we give, through that election process, that power to our representatives and we say, you go and represent us. But what we've done is to have stepped back, having
Yes.
done that, for those who bother to vote, let me say, right? And then we watch them and we criticize them. And then we wait for the next election and we either vote them out
Yes.
or, whatever. Now, I think we ought to, this is time after 61 years, we ought to think a little and say, ought we to engage our representatives on an ongoing basis, dialogue with them, let them know what we want so that they can represent our will.
Yeah.
And therefore there's a responsibility we have to forge that relationship with our representative. And they have a responsibility to put these rules and so on in place to give us a voice. And that's what we're calling more direct democracy, where we need a direct say in what is being done. So we want to have a direct voice in how our money is spent. So we want a participatory budgeting process where we can say, this is a problem in our community. This is what we're trying to solve. And this is how we want our tax dollars to be used to solve that problem. We have this massive problem of crime. And that, I think, is one area we could use that approach.
I want to go back to a bit there, as you know, ladies and gentlemen. There's a key point you mentioned about the power invested in the prime minister, and we're talking about constitution reform. And in constitution reform, this is a bit that is baffling, because we may want to get rid of the prime minister and get rid of the king and get a president, and we're going to say the prime minister have too much powers. But then at the same time, we got to be careful, won't you say, that we may get a president
but even more power,
more power, and then it gets more corrupted. So what, as someone says, the constitution need to have all of these things in place there, because in France, Macron just appointed a prime minister, and I'm saying, hang on a second, that's power. You just appoint. Did he consult with the people in appointing that prime minister? So we may have a president who have all this power, and then all of a sudden we get crazy. Oh my days, we swap black dog for monkey.
Absolutely. And Jamaicans ought to be particularly careful about how we manage the kind of authoritarian tendency we have that's embedded in our culture. We see it in our schools, we see it in our homes, we see it in the churches, we see it all over. We see it in how we run our organizations. There's this tendency to rule as it's my way or the highway. It's set, it's some want it, you know? And I think we have to be very careful about that, because what we can see is that the same rules, the same power that you give one person could be used in a different way in the hands of another person.
Yes.
So we have to be very careful about the extent and the nature of the power that we assign, such that there is adequate oversight and accountability and transparency, and importantly, that there are mechanisms in which our voices can be heard.
Yeah. And I think we've touched this already, but I just go through the script there. The AN continues to advocate for members of the parliament, MPs, who are the subject of an investigation by the IC for illicit enrichment, corruption, to recuse themselves from all public assignments until they satisfy the relevant. Why is that so? I know we touch it, but why is that so difficult? Is it not saying that they're guilty? You're going through a process of what should I say, investigation, and to recuse yourself. That's very funny, because you have a local government election to happen, and if a local government election comes with a particular result, you may find yourself going into a general election. But you shouldn't have persons who are being investigated to carry on.
Yeah, that's very, 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 very important. And this is why transparency is key. I think we ought to know who these 6 individuals are. And it is troubling that they still sit in Parliament and could be part of the process of deciding the future of the very institution that is investigating them.
Governance, corruption and cronyism. Corruption continues to be a major concern. That is one of the things that you flag up. The Stocks and Securities, SSL, multi-million-dollar fraud has raised several questions about Jamaica's financial regular networks, such as, and Usain Bolt was just speaking recently, said, why watching them, I can't get my money back, you know what I mean? Corruption and cronyism. Let's talk about that, Professor. That's one of the bits which is in the press release that you guys sent out for 2024.
This matter is troubling because, not only was, somebody like Usain Bolt involved, and it has brought international attention to this matter. And of course, there are all kind of implications of that for the nature of the relationships we want to have globally. If we don't have, if there's a perception that we have financial institutions that are not running with the level of integrity and trustworthiness that we need. And the latest thing that we've heard, that there was a break-in, is truly troubling.
The laptop. The laptop.
We have the laptops are stolen. We hear that one of them is belonging to the chief financial officer of the SSL. I mean, we assume therefore that there is important information that may be missing. Now, who is held responsible? Who will be held responsible? Now, these are questions that we have to pose, and that this matter is long in coming. There's a lot of issues being asked about, for example, the role of the Financial Services Commission, the report that they made to the minister, the minister's own supervision and oversight of these institutions, and so on. There are lots of issues. In the final analysis, the question comes back to the rules, were they followed, and who will be held accountable. One of the rules that we highlighted is the rules with respect to the boards of these very bodies that are supposed to be watchdogs, right? Yeah. That we have people who sit on the boards who are affiliated with political parties or lack the capacity and the competence to provide the kinds of supervision and management that we want to see. And therefore, importantly, in 2021, there were improvements to the Public Bodies Accountability Management and Accountability Act, and there was a regulation that was passed at that time. And so we keep asking the question, when will it be implemented? When will the regulation kick in? And I think when they do, we hope to see better management of our public sector bodies.
Wow. I mean, that's what you just said. Public bodies management and accountability, absence of adequate oversight. I was a bit baffled, I must say, by the Water Commission recently, and of course I can't speak much into it without all the facts, but that there was this infringement of this building arrangement or so, and but because of the 1 year statute of limitation, they got off scot-free. And when you see that there, you can't even blame the person directly, but you say, what are these oversight bodies doing in order for that to happen? Then a big question someone said to me in the UK, they said, then Sylbourne, even if they don't catch the guy and he get off scot-free, are we going to say that the criminal act which took place will remain? Mean to say the building and the infringement is going to still remain the same, or that is going to be reversed? You see what I'm trying to say? So therefore, people are now thinking and say, hang on a second, none of these big boys or these big guys are being caught. A small fry will be caught, but none of these guys are being caught. You know what I'm trying to say? So the question now shines a spotlight back again to the topic of today: governance, rights, people. Because if you're even talking about, I say, a ministry of peace will operate effectively when there's no conflict. But if there's conflicts going on all over with all of these things, the peace is not coming from the top, in it.
Well, this matter raises questions of equality before the law and the perception that we have as rules and laws that only apply to one set of people.
Yes.
And there are, it's not just that the rules are adhered to, but they must be, the society must feel confident that they are applicable to everyone. So we can't continue to see that, as we saw during the COVID arrangements, that only one set of people in the society were held accountable, broke those rules. Others who may have were never caught and punished. And so this matter of equality before the law is certainly one of the human rights principles that we advocate for. And so, yes, we are troubled about this. We hope that somewhere soon we can get to the bottom of what happened
Mm.
and that somebody will be held accountable.
Yes. Someone just said, Sylbourne and Professor Hamilton, what are your thoughts on the principle of separation of powers versus fusion of powers and how it works within the Caribbean, Jamaica? Someone on Instagram. Are you going to thoughts on that there?
Well, we've seen the separation work in countries and we've seen the fusion work in other countries. And in both expressions of this idea of how we manage these arms of government, whether we fuse them or we keep them separate, the
Yes.
question still remains about the extent to which we manage and provide adequate oversight over the most powerful arm, which is the executive, because that's the arm that you give all our resources to, our financial resources to, and that's the arm that day to day exercise power on our behalf.
Mm.
And what we see in both models is expressions in which the executive dominates the legislature. The both in terms of size and in terms of the work, what is done,
Mm.
the way in which they've exercised that power. And so I don't think there is any quick fix to
Mm.
that problem by simply saying let's make that separation, because
Yeah.
we have to just look good across the world, and we see that in countries where there's a president and there is a separation, there is a legislature and an executive, we see the dominance of the executive over that legislature, although
Yeah.
they're separate, they're not fused. And what we also see in some of these countries is dictatorship.
Mm.
That doesn't solve our problem. We are already seeing the problems now in this fused form. So, we can choose to separate, but we know that there are countries that have moved from that fused approach to the separation and are going back to the fused approach.
Yes. 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 Yes.
So I say to people that there's no panacea. Either way you go, there are issues with respect to how we manage power, how we hold the people that we give the power to accountable, and how we provide the kind of oversight so that not only our representatives, but we the people have a say and is able to influence the decisions that ultimately affect our lives.
That is powerful. And I'm looking at and I'm going through the list that you have compiled for 2024, which is crucial for every Jamaica. And you have touched on something which is so powerful. And I believe that every time it is raised, people in Jamaica go like this, oh, unacceptable, unconscionable, and unfair pay increase. And you
Yes,
respond to your group respond to the unprecedented announcement of 200% increase in salaries for MPs. I was on my show last night and someone was taking me to task by saying, Sylbourne, this is from 2013. This is not the government that, and I said, bro, listen, even if it was supposed to be from 2013, wrong time, wrong amount, wrong time, wrong thing. And it's you can't defend something which is so undefensible. And I said, and you're gonna come in. I said, I just have to get my piece in here. The prime minister and I believe the government said, now we've got the money, now we can work. And I'm saying, hang on a second. So when you actually knock on people's door to say that, hey, I'm the guy who's gonna run for this constituency, you know what the money was. But so all of a sudden, now you can attract the best talents. The best talents should be people who really care about their country, isn't it, Rosalie? Wanted to make a big
absolutely.
difference.
And it speaks volumes about who you've attracted before, because it says we didn't have the best. I mean, there are lots of issues there. We were
Yeah.
very, very disappointed. And a lot of it was contextual as well. It
Yes.
was only weeks before we heard the government saying to our civil servants, the nurses, the teachers, the police, that they couldn't give them any more money. right?
Yes.
These are the teachers, the people who care for us, and of course, the teachers who are at the forefront of
Mm.
educating our people.
Yes.
And somehow, and let me say, when I listen to some of these public servants talk, the matter is still unsettled,
Yes.
and so there are still outstanding issues. And so we were very, very disappointed. We noted in particular, for example, that the governor general's salary moved from 12 million to 34 million dollars
Phew.
in a context where we are now having a national debate about the relevance of a governor general, a representative of a foreign
Yeah.
hereditary monarch, right? And
Does he
whether
does he still have the ackee tree? Does he still have the ackee tree? Does
well, the point is that this salary, by the way, is tax exempt.
tax
you
exempt?
know and so this is something that we drew to the attention of the public and said, listen, these are issues we have to be careful about, and we have to make sure that when we put a presidency in place, we don't reproduce some of these things that are inherited in the legal arrangement of a governor general, like tax exemption, like exemption from
Mm.
the Access to Information Act.
Yes.
Those kinds of things. We have to say no. If we want a representative who will speak on our behalf, whether in the form of a prime minister or a president or what have you, then we want to hold them to the same rules, the same standards that all of us are held to.
I just got a flash. I just got a what you call it, a flash bulb moment a while ago, where it seems to me very clearly that government should really be very encouraged that citizens are so very much interested in what is happening in a government. And it is not attacking a government. As Rosemary said, Advocacy Network is not anti government. We are more pro, I'll say this, we're more pro people. We're pro people, we're not anti government.
And if the
Pro people.
government is pro people, we are pro government and pro people.
Exactly. So you can't go wrong there. So you can't go wrong at all. You're that Mr. Prime Minister and Mr. Opposition Leader. And it's very important that whoever win the next election or so, they're on warning watch, because it is not just Jamaicans back home, but Jamaicans in the diaspora like myself who are keeping the government accountable. Because at the end of the day, yesterday there was a march in London, um, Hamas and not Hamas, people are standing up for Palestine. You got the Palestinian diaspora, you got the Jewish diaspora, you got Asian diaspora. Everyone plays a fundamental part in their homeland. So, as far as I'm concerned, Jamaicans overseas need to not be detracted by someone saying, oh no, they are foreign, no, no business about here. The letter by Ruth Word Francis, for argument's sake, whether or not they like it, but the merit is in the issues which were raised, which need to be raised, Rosalie, which need to be addressed by the government.
On the matter of issues, I want to remind the audience that a
Mm.
very interesting result from the Don Anderson poll was revealed just a few weeks ago. And what that poll said is that the Jamaican people who were expressing their views about what they would vote for said that the main thing, 51% of them said the main thing they would vote for is the issues.
Mm.
So I think that's a shift, because for so long, many of us felt that people are only voting for the political party or for the party leader, or, because they're getting benefits or for handouts and all these
Yes.
other things. But
Yes.
again, we have to be careful with how we analyze our society, because we're changing. And
Yes.
I think that's one indication of an important change that has taken place in the voting population.
Mm.
That we're saying to our elected officials and people who want to represent us that we will vote for you on the issues you stand for. Now, that I think can change the game.
Yes.
Because if we begin to push for the issues regardless of the political party,
Mm.
right? Then not only will we see a more fluid outcome with respect to, there's no shrinking the size of the diehards,
Yes.
because more of us are saying, who are prepared to vote, We are prepared to vote on the issues. And this is something that we have to stand for. This is something we have to put on the table, right? And the question now is, what is that issue? And I want to just make this other point on that. That same poll said the most important issue that was listed. Now, there are many other issues that were not listed. Let's bear
Yes.
that in mind.
Yes.
But
Yes.
of the issues that were listed, the number one issue was access to job opportunities and more jobs. You should note that this was the response in the face of 10 quarters of consecutive growth,
Yes.
and in the context of unprecedented unemployment rate of about 4.5%.
Wow.
Now, why is that? Well, we have to think about the quality of the jobs that we're talking about, the livability of people who have access to these jobs.
Yes.
Can they live off that income at the level that they want?
Yes.
And if we use the poll results as we have and add up all the things that we could conceivably associate with improving living standards, we see that about 50% of the voting population want to see issues that are associated with improving their living standards on the table. And this is what they're prepared to vote for. So I hope our political representatives are listening closely and are observing the shift in our society, and observing that people like yourself and people in the diaspora are saying, we too are concerned about the issues, and we're
Yes.
prepared to stand and make our voices heard.
Yes. I've got here Empower TV networks. I agree. Citizens have to engage their government to make sure that they play their part in the social contract with the state. Otis Pinnock and Rosemary Francis Binder said, Advocate Network demonstrated for 17 days across from the finance ministry in Kingston called for a rollback of the 214 to 300% salary increase for politicians. Now, I know we discussed this already, but when you guys stood for those days, the small amount of people in comparison to Jamaicans, what was your what was the, I would like to say, mischief? What was the reason why you guys stood there making that sound knell in front of the Ministry of Finance against this exorbitant increase?
In addition to our own expression of the fact that we thought that the size of the increase in the context of what was happening in Jamaica at the time was unacceptable and unconscionable.
Yeah.
We were also, I think, reflecting the voice of the voiceless.
Yes.
Jamaicans who would pass us, not just on the streets while we're demonstration, but outside, and say to us, thank you for speaking for us, because many of us are afraid. There are many civil servants who said thank you, and they were afraid to speak because they felt it would threaten their jobs.
Wow.
And so people are generally afraid to speak up, because the economic conditions in Jamaica now for the average Jamaican is not nice. I just came from the supermarket just to pick up a few things for a meeting I'm about to go into, and I was shocked when I saw the bill. Just a few things. We are, many of us are on the edge, and will not engage in advocacy, will not demonstrate, because they think that that would make their conditions worse. So we are very mindful of that.
They'll be targeted.
Absolutely, and we're very mindful of that. And for those of us who feel that we can and ought to stand on the shoulders and stand on behalf of many who are not able or are fearful of speaking out, that was one of the things that motivated us.
Yeah. Time is going on us, but if you want to, I don't know how long you have, but constitution reform, that is a good maybe topic to finish off. I mean, there's much more. We can skim through them, but constitution reform, that is something which is on the horizon, and you have placed this as one of those key bits that need to be on the forefront of Jamaica's mind in 2024, because chances are there could be a vote this year if all being well.
Absolutely. We started early in the year with a FIWI Republic campaign, and we thought that this was important to signal by the very name of the campaign that this republic that we are moving to belongs to us.
Yes.
I think there are some Jamaicans who think that the government is going to hand us a republic.
Yes.
And I think for those who think about it that way, they misconstrue what is facing the nation today. That the very process of changing the constitution must be a process that involves the people of Jamaica. That's what makes it different than the current constitution that we have. The current constitution that we have is a piece of British legislation,
Yes.
right? And therefore, what we now want is a piece of legislation that emanates from the people in terms of our will, a constitution by the people, for the people, in the interest of the people. And that constitutional arrangement must be passed by our representatives in Parliament. Now, when we do that, and when we ensure that as best as we can, this is not an easy task to get the voice of even half, let alone most of the population, to get their views into this process of changing the constitution. However we get it done, we ought to end up with a constitution that we feel that even if we didn't make our voice heard, we had a chance to. Even if we didn't fully understand the issues, there were many opportunities to understand it, because there's an extensive education program that was available, right? And it is when we have that, we move to this republic where the legal foundations are set and our dreams and aspirations are embedded in a constitution, in our preamble that tells us this is where we want to go. And so when the Advocates Network made a submission to the Constitution Reform Committee, we kind of looked at different parts of this constitution and the process and so on. The preamble was one of them, and we felt that that's a place in which all our voices could be heard. We can find a way to say what are your dreams and aspirations for this nation. Right? I was on a talk show just recently, and one caller just said, "This is all about equality, freedom, equality, and justice." And I said, "Well, that's a great way to summarize it, because we're talking about putting a legal framework in place to achieve some specific objectives, and we ought not to lose sight of those objectives. It's a means to an end, so that the rules lay the foundation for us to achieve the standard of living that we want." Jamaicans say, you'll hear Jamaicans say, "Boy, you can't eat constitution." Well, that's another way of saying we want to live like decent people. We want to earn a decent salary. We want to be able to send our children to school and them get a real education, etc. So we want to lift the standard of living. We want to live in a Jamaica that's free, that's safe, that's humane, and that is just, and that we want a legal framework grounded in good governance that can deliver that. And I think that is what ultimately the Advocates Network is fighting for. And that's the framework and the lens in which we use to interpret this constitutional reform.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to wrap up now, and we're going to just close down on human rights, the crime and violence, because that was the bit there. Human rights, crime and violence plagued Jamaica for too long. State of emergency. That is something which is a key point for yourselves as well, in respect of Jamaica.
Big issue. I know that this is of tremendous concern. It's a tremendous concern to the diaspora. It comes up on a lot of polls and discussions. Jamaicans in the diaspora are afraid to return home, many of them, because of the level of crime and violence. And although we've heard that the crime is down over last year, I think Jamaicans need to remember a couple of things. We're still not out of the woods. We have a UN statement that we should be reminded of, that in fact, any homicide rate of more than 10 per 100,000, 10 per 100,000 or above, is considered epidemic.
Mm.
And that then puts in perspective the fact that although our homicide rate fell from 52.9 per 100,000 in 2022
Yes.
to 49.3 in 2023,
Wow.
it is still epidemic.
Well,
And so we have a lot of work to do.
but I was listening to the prime minister the other day, and I hope I'm not misquoting him, but he was speaking to someone, and he was saying crime is going down, crime is going down, but the perception is increasing, and Jamaica has a mental issue. So it was like saying crime, while it's going down, but it was like not saying it's acceptable. I'm not going to say it was accepting, but it was saying that crime is going down, but the perception
But
of many people
this
that
is not just about perception. It is
yeah,
about reality. Not only is
yes,
the evidence in the data
mm,
that what we're going in the right direction, no doubt,
yes,
right? And we have much further to go to begin to feel safe. The recent polls told us that more than 50% of Jamaicans feel unsafe, and
yes,
that is truly troubling. So, I think there's much more that needs to be done. The view that crime fundamentally is a development issue is something for us to consider, because there are lots of development challenges that we face. At the
yes,
center of that is the education challenge, and that we need to do better to educate our people, to
yes.
create for them the educational asset that they can use to earn and to create opportunities for the future.
Yeah, and the human rights for the treatments of the Asians. That's another
Yeah,
bit there.
that's
Which,
really, really troubling, because
mm,
we feel that what we're seeing in terms of how we treat Haitians and others, Cubans recently, seeking asylum, is a breach of our international obligations under
mm,
the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. you know Seeking asylum is a right, and therefore we ought to give these individuals an opportunity to exercise that right. And of
mm,
course, if they're found involved in any illegality, then it is certainly within the law and is justified to not have them, not grant them asylum. But this
yeah,
is something that we're very concerned about, and it just speaks to the kinds of issues that we're grappling with as a group
yes,
about our humanity.
yes. And in conclusion, you set out there, you made it clear that upon your reflection, it's such that some progress has been made. However, much more is to be done on our journey towards a more just and equitable society. You can wrap up on that one, Professor Hamilton.
Yes, we're not just saying nothing was done. There's
Yes,
progress we can identify, but for those of us who continue to advocate for the improvement of our society, we're of the view that Jamaica can be the greatest country in the world.
yes,
We have demonstrated that in the extent to which we have given to the world a music that is among the best. We've given musicians that are among the best in the world. We've given athletes. We've produced individuals at the height of their professions. And so it is not inconceivable for Jamaica to become the best country in the world. And I think
mm,
we feel we can do much more. Not everybody will agree to how we interpret these issues, but we hope that your listeners here and most Jamaicans will agree that we need to improve governance and human rights. And we end on the note that this is not just the responsibility of our government.
yes,
It is our responsibility as owners of Jamaica. And that I think that where we are now, as we forge dialogue around a new constitution, that
mm,
the future of Jamaica is in our hands. We can shape the future by the way we frame the legal arrangements going forward. And the note that I like to end on is the idea that the power of the people is greater than the people in power.
Professor Rosalie Hamilton, thank you. That was very succinct and very powerful. And I believe what we have done, we have set the stage for following show. And ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back again in 2 weeks' time, which would be the 28th at the same time, looking at different areas. And I want to thank you so much for coming on. People, those on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Instagram specifically, you'll have to go onto the YouTube. The program won't be saved there. Go onto YouTube, Sylbourne TV, and you can get the show from there. But I believe tonight, what we have done, we have set out something which is very important for people in Jamaica and in the diaspora to recognize that there are voices and there are people out there who are charting the way forward. Because guess what? You have national heroes, man. And national heroes were persons who were sweat and blood. Marcus Garvey, Nane, Paul Bogle, George William Gordon, Manley, all of them. They charted the way, isn't it, Rosalie? They charted the way for a better Jamaica. So therefore, we have
the
to
same issues of governance and human rights. Absolutely.
Governance and human rights. Paul Bogle and George. Yeah, governance and human rights. It's the same thing that we are fighting for. But we got to make sure that the people, and last night I was saying this, Professor, was that the government, they're saying if the people are not engaging in, even like with the town hall meetings and their educational program there, and they're not moving forward. My good friend Michelle was there. She said last night, because their felt need is the need of that food. Them not think about king and queen and all them sort of things. How do we move it from that felt issue that they have of food and to tap into the education process which is there for them, because they are the ones that's going to make a difference when they go to the polling booth.
Quite so. And the discussion and the arguments that we want to make is that there is a direct connection. It's not so obvious. People may not think about it. But if we stop to think about the economic program of our country, these are decisions, these are policies that somebody makes. And the question we have to ask is, who is making these policies and in whose interest? And if it is that our representatives in parliament or the cabinet or the prime minister, whoever is making the decision, is making it without our involvement, without our economic considerations at the fore, then it's very unlikely that those decisions will be made in our interest. So we advocate for a participatory process in which the economic actors, the innovators, the creators, people in the creative industry, they've been shouting on the fringes, on the margins, saying, give us more resources, help us. We can create a creative future for Jamaica. We can put new industries, new goods and services on the table that the world has never seen. We've demonstrated it already.
Yes.
This is not a theoretical idea. And so strengthen our capacity to do more. And I am not sure that successive governments have listened to that loud cry. They've listened to a few people who have been able to make the case to support industries that they can benefit from. And what we see as an outcome of those decisions is that we have an economy that benefits a few. And the vast majority of the Jamaicans are not benefiting from the current structure of our economy. And so we have to do much more to lift the standard of living of all of us so that we can address the needs of those who need it most.
Well, I guess we together and collectively, we will all make a difference. Professor Rosalie Hamilton. Well, thank you so much for joining today. Any last word?
We just want to thank you and your listeners for, taking time to listen to this. Hope that, we've shared information that deepens your understanding of the issues that we're grappling with. And we want to just encourage your listeners to join the advocacy, make your voice heard. It's not just about joining the Advocates Network. It's also about, finding any other group or as an individual writing a letter, talking to your
Yes.
representative. Just
Yes.
make sure that you understand that you own Jamaica and
Mm.
that your voice matters.
Well, thank you so much. And I know you got another powerful meeting going to, and I think I'm supposed to be joining you a bit little later. From Oche. They're Oche. Sorry, I'm not in Oche. I'm in the UK. My dream is in Oche.
Oh, we
Professor
look
Rosalie
you, man.
Hamilton, thank you so much for it, and all the best. And we'll see you around. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure is mine. Bye
Good.
bye.
All the
Thank
best.
you. Cheers. Bye bye. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for joining tonight. And as you can listen and you've heard the show with Professor Rosalie Hamilton, where we tapped on many different issues regarding governance and human rights in Jamaica. It was self-explanatory, and I can, if you want to, I can always send you the press release as well that breaks it down. You can just let me show you, give you my my details there. You can contact me there on the show there. You can contact me regarding getting information regarding, you know, there we are. Let me see if I can put the information up there. There we are. Boom, boom, boom. Yes. You can contact me at info@sylbourne.com, Sylbourne TV on website as well, sylbourne.com as well. And you can get more information, and I'll be posting more bits and pieces regarding constitutional reform and advocacy network and the different networks, which, because it's not just Rosalie Hamilton, you got different persons who are in this bigger picture. And as far as I'm concerned, I believe this is about helping Jamaica. This is about helping the government. And I like the bit which I coined earlier when my good friend Rosemary Binder said, advocacy network and advocates group are not anti-government, and I just add, they are pro-people, they are pro-Jamaican. So if the government will advocate and say they are pro-Jamaicans, and if the advocates network and different groups are saying they are pro-Jamaicans, that means to say all should work hand in hand for a better Jamaica. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, remember to like and subscribe to the show on YouTube, Sylbourne TV. Those on Instagram, it's not going to remain on Instagram. You'll have to go on to Sylbourne TV on YouTube, also on Facebook. And for TikTokers, thank you for joining. A lot of discussions was over there. I'm glad that you played a part in the whole process. And next week, Saturday night as well. So peace out. God bless you. And I'll see you around in the wonderful future. Thank you.